Hello everyone, it's Özgün here. In this tutorial, we will talk about kick drums. I know it's a struggle to choose the best kick drum that fits perfectly to your song. And if you choose a bad kick drum or a kick drum which is not fitting to your track, it can totally ruin your song. And today I like to show you my checklist, which aspects of a kick drum I'm being careful when I'm picking the kicks for my song. And if you're ready, let's get into the tutorial. Okay, here I am with several kick drums and just a rough the song idea. Let me show it first, maybe with the first kick drum. So my first checklist is the length of the kick. Guys, the length of the kick is so important. I see it from most of my students and also from the feedback streams. Most beginner producers usually don't care about the length of the kick drum, they just use it as it is. But always remember this, when we working with the low frequencies, which are bass, our sub is occupying the low frequencies of the spectrum and our kick also occupying the low frequencies of the spectrum. And we cannot make them clash in the bass, in the sub frequency region in here. So you can do something like that. Always just go to your kick drum and shorten it a little bit. Make sure it's not more than half bar most of the cases, because most of the time we need the half of the bar, at least half of the bar for our bass. And if the kick drum occupies too much space, we wouldn't have any more space for our bass. So that's why just look at your bass and according to it, shorten your kick a little bit. And find a sweet spot when both your bass and kick sounds good together. So for example, if we are using a rolling bass like that, probably we can just leave some space for the first hit of the bass as well. So just shortening the kick a little bit would make the kick bass sounds much more cleaner. Okay, let's make another example. What if we are using a rumble like that instead of a rolling bass line? Maybe in this case we can do something like that. We can just do the opposite. So if you want to give more freedom to the kick, we can just go to the rumble, go to our bass, put a sidechain to it, and I can see that clearly my kick currently contains half of the bar, and the rest half is gonna be just for my bass. So I can just go a very hard sidechain curve like that for my rumble. And to be sure, maybe we don't even need to shorten the kick from here. We can just copy this LFO tool to the kick channel and we can just invert the sidechain curve. Now, since we invert the sidechain curve, the kick and bass is gonna just fit perfectly, just like a puzzle, because they have exactly the same sidechain curve with a reversion. So what about, for example, if we have a short kick like that and we still use the rumble? Yeah, unfortunately, in this case, this kick is not for your song. Just don't use it at all in this kind of bass lines, because even though you don't need to hear it, you can just clearly see it. The kick ends somewhere around here and then the bass is not even started yet. So if we just use this kick with this song, we will have a huge gap on our low end, which is gonna make our drop sounds very weak. So if you wanna use the short kick, maybe you can just use the rolling bass, because when the kick ends, our bass line just starts. So then we can just make them work together. So that was the first thing on our checklist. The second thing is the waveform. When you're choosing kicks, just look at the waveforms. For example, I randomly find this kick, and as you see, the waveform look a little bit different than the other kicks. So this kick occupies like full headroom. It just looks very full. This one also very full. But what about this? We got the transient, the attack is just occupying full headroom, and the rest of the kick is just so silent compared to that. So there are huge dynamic range on this kick. What if we use this kick just as it is in our song? We cannot hear the kick, right? It's extremely silent. We cannot normalize it because the click is already hitting 0 dB. So if you have a kick like that and maybe you want to boost the volume, then the transient is gonna clip, because it's currently on 0 dB. And if I boost more volume to this kick, it's gonna just clip. So in this kind of cases, you need to know what to do. So if you still want to use this kick, you need to clip the kick. So you need to clip the transient until you got some headroom for your kick. Then you can be able to use the kick. So I'm gonna use free clip and I will just adjust the ceiling in here. As you see, when I tame those dynamics, when I clip the transients of the kick, now the waveform looks similar to the other kicks. And after clipping the kick, now we can just use it. For example, you can give it a little bit output gain. And as you see now, this kick looks like just a regular kick drum. And now we are totally free to use this on our song. So always check the waveform and see if there are huge dynamic range problems in the kick. Then you can compress or clip or limit whatever you like. But without a purpose, just don't clip or compress your kick because you just heard it from a tutorial, Do it for a purpose. That's so important in my opinion. Okay, the third thing in our checklist is definitely the key of the kick. So key of the kick totally doesn't matter. It's matter in some cases, but we will talk about it. So as you see, my song is on G sharp, as you see in the bass. Should I use a G sharp kick or can I use any kick that I like? So it depends on the situation. So the first thing I recommend you, just go to the piano roll and do the scale high lightning thing. G sharp, let's say minor. And now the bright keys on the background is the usable keys, right? So we can use G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, and then go back to G sharp. So those 7 keys are the notes that is gonna fit to my G sharp minor scale. If I choose my kick from that allowed keys from that G sharp scale, it's gonna sound good. It's gonna sound harmonic. So for example, the first kick I showed you is E, which is in the G sharp minor scale. So I can just use it without any problems. But what if we wanna use, let's say this kick? Because as you see, this kick has tons of tail, which contains tonal information. The tail of the kick, if it's too long, it's gonna contain the tonal information. Yeah, it's gonna have a key, a certain key, which is gonna so obvious. So if that's the case, and if you are trying to use this kick like that, it's gonna sound bad. Because the tail is totally clashing currently with our bass. Our bass is G sharp and the tonal kick is not of A. And if we check the piano roll, A is a forbidden key. It's not even in our scale, which in this case is gonna cause problems. It's not gonna sound good in the full song. But instead you can, in this case, just find other kick samples which is in the key. So if I use this G sharp tonal kick, which contains a very big tail, very long tail, contains the pure harmonic tonal information. But if it's the same key with my bass, it's gonna sound good. Let's just compare. So this or this. As you see, it's so minor, just minor change, but affects the whole tonality of our low end. So yeah, the key doesn't matter, but if the kick has a tail that contains sub information, tonal information, so you gotta match the key to your bass, which is the best case. Okay, let's go to the fourth topic of our checklist, which is gonna be the EQ. Sometimes we choose a good kick with our song, but still it sounds bad. In this case, maybe we are just losing some little touch with the EQ. So this kick is in key of B. And as you see, this is a little bit longer. Let's make it short. So if we check this kick with span, we can see that the transient of the kick is shorter than, for example, this heel in here just after the attack, just after the click. We got a little bit too much punch of the kick. So you can divide the kick by 3 parts. The first part is the attack, the transient, the click of the kick. And just after that, we got the punch, which is just, punching our chest. And the rest is tail. So in this example, I feel like the punch of the kick just a little bit too much. And I'm gonna just solve it. So you can always check the waveforms when you are EQing it. And punch usually comes to the second octave or like 100 hertz area. So I know this kick is in the note of B. So if I just go find the B note in here, maybe the B2, just in here. And if I just a little bit dip it. Now I tamed those big spikes on here, but we still got some spike in here. So let's find those frequency and try to make it even, like more flat. It's approximately in here, and if I dip it, sorry, not this one, this one. And maybe I can give it a little bit click. Now the waveform looks more clean. We tame a little bit 300 Hz, a little bit second octave, and just boost a little bit click. Now let's see how it's gonna sound with rest of the song. Let me just mute those kicks. And maybe we can try it with the other bass as well. And the last part of our checklist is gonna be the volume of the kick, obviously. So in order to balance your kick and bass in a perfect state, you can do something like that. So we will just turn on span and you can do the settings like that. I found those settings on Abstract Lab YouTube channel, so you should check it out. He got very cool content in his channel. So if you do your settings in span like that, you will have a more low-end focused graphical representation in here. So we will just check and see where our bass hits. So it hits like minus 8.5, something like that. So I like to put my kick 1 dB more than my sub frequency. So I will put my kick like something like 7, 6, approximately in that level. Obviously, I already put the kick to the correct level while I was just tweaking stuff. So this is the thing I do. That's why the kick and bass relationship sound this good. The kick is always should be a little bit louder than your bass. So there can be 1 or 2 dB just difference. Alright guys, I show you my kick checklist today and we talk about how to find and pick the perfect kick drum in your songs. I hope you can apply these tricks to your own productions as well. See you on the next video. Bye bye.